Please, don't rush past me like everyone else. I just need a steady arm, and maybe a moment of patience." The voice was fragile, almost lost in the morning traffic noise on Fifth Avenue, but 25-year-old Mirabelle heard it clearly. She'd been rushing to her waitressing shift, her third job alongside law school and weekend tutoring, running late as usual, when she noticed the elderly man standing at the crosswalk, his hand trembling on his cane, watching cars blur past with an expression that mixed fear and resignation. Most people hurried around him, their eyes sliding away from his obvious struggle. But Mirabelle stopped, her mother's words echoing in her mind. "Slow down enough to see people, Mira. That's where your humanity lives." "Of course," Mirabelle said gently, offering her arm. "Take all the time you need, sir. The world can wait a few minutes." The old man's watery blue eyes met hers with such profound gratitude that Mirabelle felt her throat tighten. He was probably in his late 70s, dressed in an expensive but slightly rumpled suit, his silver hair neatly combed, but his hands shaking with either age or illness. When he gripped her arm, his touch was surprisingly strong despite the tremor. "You're very kind," he said as they began crossing slowly, cars honking impatiently around them. "Most people these days, they don't even see old men like me. We're just obstacles, slowing down their important lives." "Then they're missing out," Mirabelle replied, matching her pace to his careful shuffle. "My grandmother always said the best conversations happen at a slower speed. You notice more when you're not racing past everything." They made it across safely, and Mirabelle helped him to a nearby bench. The old man sat heavily, catching his breath, and Mirabelle found herself checking her watch anxiously. She was now definitely late, but something about his loneliness kept her rooted. "What's your name, young lady?" he asked. "Mirabelle. Everyone calls me Mira." "And what do you do, Mira, when you're not rescuing old men from traffic?" Mirabelle laughed softly. "I'm in my last year of law school, trying to be anyway. I work 3 jobs to pay tuition since my parents can't afford it. They immigrated from Taiwan, worked so hard to give me opportunities, so I can't let them down by quitting, even though it's exhausting." What Mirabelle didn't say was that she'd been rejected by 12 firms already for internships. Her immigrant background and lack of connections seemed to create invisible walls, that she was starting to fear her degree would lead to nowhere despite all the sacrifice. "The law is noble work," the old man said thoughtfully, "but it requires advocates who remember they're serving people, not just precedents. You seem like someone who wouldn't forget that." They talked for 20 minutes, Mirabelle now hopelessly late, but somehow unable to leave. The old man, who introduced himself simply as Harrison, told her about losing his wife 2 years ago, about how the world had grown quieter and lonelier since then. He lived with his son, he said, but his son was always busy with work, always distracted, and Harrison felt more like an obligation than a father. "I'm sorry," said Mirabelle softly. "That must be incredibly lonely." "It is," Harrison admitted. "But today, because of you, I feel a little less invisible. Thank you for that." When they finally parted, Harrison pressed a worn business card in Mirabelle's hand. "If you ever need anything, please call. I may be old, but I'm not entirely useless yet." Mirabelle glanced at the card. H. William Prescott, Chairman Emeritus, Prescott National Bank, and her heart nearly stopped. Harrison William Prescott was a legend in financial circles, one of the most powerful bankers in the state, maybe the country, and she just spent 20 minutes chatting with him like he was an ordinary grandfather. She wanted to say something, acknowledge who he was, but Harrison was already waving her off. "Go on now, before you're even later. And Mira, don't give up on the law. The world needs people like you." Mirabelle ran to work, her mind spinning, but she tucked the card carefully in her wallet and tried not to think about it. She hadn't helped him because of who he was. She hadn't even known, and she refused to cheapen that moment by trying to leverage it now. What Mirabelle didn't know was that Harrison had gone straight home and told his son everything. 33-year-old Thaddeus Prescott sat in his home office, barely listening at first. He was CEO of Prescott National Bank, a position he inherited too young when his father stepped down after his mother's death. The responsibility consumed him, long hours, endless pressure, the weight of thousands of employees depending on his decisions. He'd become exactly what his father had warned against, successful but hollow. Competent, but disconnected. "Dad, that's nice, but I have a board meeting in an hour." "Listen to me, Thaddeus," Harrison interrupted, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "A young woman stopped to help me cross the street today, not because she knew who I was, she had no idea, but because she saw a struggling old man and chose kindness over convenience. Do you understand how rare that is?" Thaddeus paused, really looking at his father for the first time in weeks. There was life in Harrison's eyes, animation in his gestures that had been absent since the funeral. "She's a law student, working 3 jobs, trying to make herself despite having no connections or advantages. She reminds me of your mother, that same fierce determination combined with genuine compassion. I want to help her."
Dad, we can't just hand out opportunities to everyone who's nice to you. I'm not asking you to hand out anything, Harrison said firmly. I'm asking you to interview her. Actually interview her, not just shuffle papers. If she's as sharp as she is kind, your firm's legal department could use someone like that. And if she's not qualified, fine, but give her a real chance. Thaddeus agreed, mostly to make his father happy, expecting a pleasant but unremarkable candidate. He was completely unprepared for Mirabelle. She arrived for the interview terrified and overwhelmed, never having been inside Prescott National Bank's gleaming headquarters. But when Thaddeus began asking about her approach to corporate law, something extraordinary happened. Mirabelle didn't just recite textbook answers, she challenged him, respectfully but firmly, on the ethical implications of several of the bank's recent policies. "With respect, Mr. Prescott, profit shouldn't come at the cost of the communities you serve. Banks have power, which means they have responsibility. Your small business lending practices are effectively excluding immigrant entrepreneurs who are actually lower risk than your models suggest simply because they don't fit traditional patterns." She had data, examples, and passion. Thaddeus found himself actually listening, not just waiting for her to finish. The interview lasted 2 hours instead of 30 minutes. At the end, Thaddeus made an impulsive decision that surprised even himself. "When can you start?" Mirabelle blinked. What? Our legal department needs someone who actually understands that law is supposed to serve justice, not just protect assets. You're right about our lending practices. I've had concerns but haven't found anyone willing to push back. Start after you graduate. Full salary, benefits, and we'll cover any remaining tuition debt as a signing bonus. Mirabelle burst into tears right there in his office, overwhelmed by the sudden transformation of her impossible situation into unexpected hope. Over the following months, as Mirabelle began working at the bank, something unexpected unfolded. She and Thaddeus developed first a professional respect, then a genuine friendship. She pushed him to remember why banking mattered beyond spreadsheets, the families buying first homes, the small businesses creating community value, the responsibility of institutional power. And he helped her understand the complex realities of corporate decision-making, teaching her to be effective, not just idealistic. But the deepest change was in Harrison. Having Mirabelle around, joining family dinners, asking about his stories, treating him like someone worth knowing, brought him back to life. And watching his father laugh again helped Thaddeus recognize how far he'd drifted from what mattered.
One evening, 6 months after that first crossing, the three of them sat in Harrison's garden. Mirabelle had just successfully argued for restructuring the bank's community lending program, a victory that would help thousands. "I still can't believe this all happened because I helped you cross a street," Mirabelle said, shaking her head. "No," Harrison said gently. "It happened because you chose to see a person instead of an inconvenience, because you valued human dignity over your own schedule. That kind of character doesn't come from opportunity, Mira. It creates opportunity." Thaddeus added quietly, "You helped my father, but you saved me too. I was so buried in success I'd forgotten what it was for. You reminded both of us that business should serve humanity, not the other way around." Mirabelle's eyes filled. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw past my lack of connections to what I might contribute." "Because someone taught me," Thaddeus said, glancing at his father, "that the most valuable people are often the ones no one's paying attention to, the ones who do right when no one's watching. That's you." The sun set over the garden, painting everything gold, and Harrison watched his son and this remarkable young woman talk about their dreams for the bank's future. He'd spent 2 years feeling invisible, irrelevant, waiting to fade away. Then a stranger had stopped to help him cross a street, and everything changed, not through grand gestures, but through simple kindness that rippled outward, touching everyone it reached. Because kindness is never truly small. Stopping to help someone struggling, offering patience instead of frustration, seeing people's humanity beneath their circumstances, these acts plant seeds we may never see bloom, but they bloom nonetheless, transforming not just the person who receives kindness, but everyone connected to them, creating chains of compassion that remake the world one generous moment at a time. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.